One day, all your dreams are gonna come true.
Abuela.
Not now.
Winter storm appears to have changed course. Experts are recommending to stay indoors.
See, abuela. Hello?
Your grandma, she's no longer with us. She passed.
Was she ill?
She's an old lady. She's falling apart, you know. Here we are. Be down the hall.
What happened to you? May I help you?
You must be the famous granddaughter.
I could hear her through the walls, praying and praying for your dreams to come true.
What the hell were you into? Balo is a religion that invokes spirits of the dead. Kobayende, collector of the dead. Once the terms are met, Kobayende will come to collect. I'll probably put some curse on me before she died.
You're not leaving, are you?
I'm ending your curse. What do you want from me?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Joining me, as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom?
Greetings and salutations, Mexican witch doctors. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. How the hell you doing, Mike?
I am doing well, too. Just relaxing this weekend. Grabbed a couple movies. I've been watching movies since I didn't really have a lot of plans going on. And other than that, here to record this episode on one of those movies that I did watch. So let's do it. Also with us, it's Dawn and Ellie. What's up, Dawn?
Yeah, what's going on? Always happy to be here.
All right. So before we get into our movie, I guess we could say that this is officially our first episode not recording on Skype. We are now on Zoom because Skype was decommissioned. We did a little test run and everything went smooth. So hopefully nothing sounds any different on the listeners' end. Maybe it's even better because I don't know. You guys kind of sound better, like the audio, than you did on Skype.
Yeah.
So
yeah, when I took the test recording that we did the other night and put it into my what do you call it, editing program, it absolutely sounded better. Like I didn't have to play around with the levels as much. So yeah, fingers crossed that the new service works better.
yeah, well, I was gonna say at least on the recording end of things, your guys' audio comes through like much better.
Nice.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, so far so good then. And that takes us to our movie for the episode, which is Rosario. And let's see. Yeah, Rosario, because other than that, I don't think there's any major new releases, but since we got screenings for this, decided might as well do that. And the premise did seem kind of interesting. So the IMDb synopsis: Rosario spends the night with her grandmother's body while she waits for the ambulance to arrive during a severe snowfall. Rosario is attacked by otherworldly entities that have taken control of her grandmother's body. All right. We will start with our general thoughts on Rosario. Venom, what did you think of the movie?
I'm going to make a statement that I made in the chat recently when I was talking to my co-hosts. Rosario, the movie, was just meh. It was all right. Rosario, the character, Wow. To the ladies listening, please forgive me. I may get a little misogynistic here, but holy shit, our main character, Rosario, is absolutely stunning. Played by Emerald Tubia, a Mexican Lebanese actress who's mainly done TV roles and some TV movies. This is pretty much her first major theatrical film. And wow, I'm sorry, folks. I think I fell in love with this woman because she was just absolutely stunning from head to toe. Just a sheer vision of loveliness. I could not get over it. Now, aside from how she looked, and I'm going to try to not let her looks kind of jade the way that I review this movie. This movie is okay. It's not necessarily a bad movie, but it's not also really all that great. It's a lot of been there, done that. We've seen witchcraft movies with the same kind of storyline. We've seen witchcraft movies with the same kind of plot twists that we get in this one. We've seen witchcraft movies that are a lot more, visceral, gory, bloody than this one is. Obviously, this is a theatrical release, so obviously it's going to be toned down a little bit. But ultimately, I mean, the story is serviceable. It's okay. It's a decent little story. It's set up well. Obviously, we have a main character who's kind of separated from one half of her family. And when her grandmother passes away, she's kind of forced back into the life of that side of the family. And obviously, there are some misunderstandings and, different plot points like that. My biggest issue with this movie is going to be with Rosario as a character. Some of her decision making is just straight up laughable. Some of her assumptions just didn't make any sense to me. Obviously, we'll go over some of those during the spoiler section. Just some of her rationalization for her decisions, just a lot of it left me scratching my head. For a woman who is a Wall Street stockbroker, obviously an incredibly intelligent woman, she made some very unintelligent decisions in this film that kind of left me scratching my head, but we'll go over that in a little bit. Nice little isolated story. I would say about 80% of this movie takes place in the grandmother's apartment, which is always nice. Those isolated horror stories always work for me, especially under the guise of a snowstorm. If you guys remember Sting from last year, we kind of had the same setup, a snowstorm trapping its tenants in a building with something potentially taking people out. This movie doesn't, obviously, this movie doesn't have the body count of a movie like Sting. This movie barely has a body count really to speak of, in all honesty. But, again, we'll get into that a little bit later. Overall, the movie is just a lot of been there, done that. It's a slick looking movie. It looks nice. The design of our, the creature design for our antagonist is fine. It doesn't like make you roll your eyes or anything. It's not necessarily exceptional by any stretch, but it works for what we're getting. I kind of alluded to the kind of plot twist at the end, which again, we've seen it before. I mean, when you're watching a movie like this, talking about, generational voodoo and, curses and blessings and things like that, you almost expect a twist ending. And I absolutely expecting an ending like we got with this one, which obviously kind of makes it a little bit less enjoyable when you kind of see where the movie is going, less than halfway through the movie. So overall, like I said, it's a serviceable supernatural horror / thriller. I mean, some people will probably argue whether this is really even truly horror. Yes, there are ghosts, there are spirits, there is a demon, blah, blah, blah. But, not a whole lot visceral happens on screen. So, I'll leave that up to the individual viewer. Like I said, if it wasn't for our main star just being so ridiculously attractive, I think I would just look at this movie as a fairly middle of the road movie. Ultimately, like I said, it's not like her performance is spectacular. We do have a great cast, though. I do have to say, we got a great cast of character actors. I mean, we've got Jose Zuniga in here, who, some people might remember. I think he was the villain in True Lies, that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. That's probably where I know him most. But again, he's one of those character actors who you may not recognize the face, or excuse me, you may not recognize the name, but you absolutely recognize the face. Same thing with our superintendent, or our building manager, played by Paul Ben Victor. I know him mostly from that first season of True Detective, but he's another veteran character actor that's done a shit ton of movies and television. And then, of course, David Dashmelian, who's kind of become a genre darling over the last couple of years. So I'm actually really, really glad to see him in this. Not nearly as big a character for him, definitely more of a side character, but whenever we see him in a film, it always works. So, he's a great actor. He always adds something to any film that he's in. I was happy to see that he was in this one. I do wish that he had a little bit more to work with, both in story and in screen time, but ultimately you get what you get. So, yeah, I'm just going to cut off my general thoughts by saying Rosario is a fairly middle of the road supernatural thriller. If you are Latino in any way, I would say it might be worth a little bit more viewing. Or should I say, would be a higher priority viewing if you were Latino, just because there's a lot of great mythology in here. Talk about the voodoo that they're practicing here, which I'll talk about a little bit later as well. So, like I said, overall, middle of the road, maybe leaning towards the good side of the middle of the road. But ultimately, when you're an older horror fan and you've been watching horror movies as long as, all three of us have, you get movies like this that on the surface look good, but it's just a lot of been there, done that. We've seen it before. We'll see it again. Hopefully, the next time we see it, it'll be a little bit better. It may not be as slick as this one and nice looking, but ultimately, give us a little bit more compelling story with more atmosphere and tension. And I think that would definitely put this movie over the top. So yeah, I'll leave my general thoughts there and say middle of the road, worth seeing. I would not recommend it as a theater watch. I don't think it's essential to see it in the theaters. As long as Sinners is still in the theaters, that's the movie I'm going to tell everybody to go see. So I would say wait for streaming on Rosario. And that's it for general thoughts for me.
All right, I'm gonna throw it over to Don. What are your general thoughts on Rosario?
Yeah, I like this a lot more when it was called The Vigil. That one was the one that it kind of really highlighted just a very similar story and a very similar playthrough, the way everything went down. That one also kind of had like I don't want to say like a religious undertone, but it also had I'm trying to like think of the proper term here, but it also had like a nationality approach, where that one was more of the Jewish faith. This one is more like a Latino storyline. But yeah, that one was kind of like my main takeaway was that I really I like the film, but I enjoy The Vigil a lot more, and it kind of reminded me of the same story. Um, Yeah, kind of, again, along the lines of like Venom said, it takes kind of like a while before like the really dark and macabre stuff starts happening. A lot of the stuff really doesn't have like that kind of oomph to it that you would really want in a genre picture. And it really does kind of just, rely on the atmosphere, the setting, and not much else. Yeah, when you kind of like realize what's going on, it very much feels kind of like a film that was maybe intended to be like a short or like an anthology segment, and then just fleshed out with extra elements just to kind of like ramp it up to like a feature length running time. Because yeah, there's very little here. I mean, yeah, it's great to look at Rosaria. I mean, I've always had a thing for Latinas, so again, at the risk of sounding misogynistic like Venom did, every second on her, I didn't mind. But when you're looking at it for kind of like like an analysis point of view, there's not much there. Um, Maybe if again, if I actually spent a little bit more time and knew what a lot of the rituals and difference, I hate to say, like the various performance aspects of like their religion and what they're practicing and what it all means. Maybe if that one, if that was a part of the, if I knew what was going on there, that may have had an impact. But yeah, for the most part here, there wasn't a whole lot to really dig into and like really enjoy. Um, yeah, I'm really trying to think here, but yeah, other than just looking at what was going on in the the setup and everything, yeah, there's just not much else here. It looks good, but I'm not really that interested in that. I mean, if you heard Sinners a few weeks ago, you'll know that I don't really care how good a film looks. I just, I want to watch it and see what's going on. But yeah, unless like like the particular culture that they're that's going on here and what's happening, film doesn't have much else for it. Yeah, I'm really struggling here to think of something and not really coming up with much. So I mean, yeah, like Sinners is still out there. Still give that thing a shot. And it's still the more important and the more worthwhile film to support. Not that this one doesn't mean anything, but I mean it feels very kind of loose. It does kind of border at times on whether or not it's a genuine genre effort. So it kind of skirts the lines too much. It's still close enough for me to count, but I mean, other than that, I can't really think of much. So yeah, I guess back to you, Mike.
All right. So for my general thoughts, I am pretty much aligned with you guys. All when the credits were rolling, my initial reaction was there was a much better movie to be made out of like the subject material and content. I kind of felt like what the movie did was like it dabbled just enough in certain things to fill out like a 90-minute movie, but at the same time only being like a 90-minute movie might have been its detriment too, because it was like, okay, if we're doing kind of like this black magic or voodoo based like backstory, we need to hit like this and this, and we'll throw in like a turn, but like everything felt so like, it was just kind of like tapping at each thing just to make sure it was like in the movie. A lot of times on this show we like praise movies for like the shorter run times, and I think in a lot of cases it is like a good thing that movies are so short. Um or not even short, just nine. I would say 90 minutes is like your standard kind of runtime for a full length feature. But sometimes there's movies with like stories that they try to throw in like certain elements that feels like they need a little more fleshing out, and I felt like this movie almost replaced like a deeper story for like just having like a twist at the end, which I don't really like. I understand what the twist was, obviously, but I almost feel like the twist didn't really change anything. I mean, I guess it changed like the responsibility of what was going on from one person to the other, but like in the grand scheme of things, it's like, okay, well, who cares? Like it doesn't really kind of change the outcome because it seemed like that was coming anyway. But I also echo the sentiments of the lead actress. This is the entertainment business, so it's not like attractive women are like at a shortage, or like in most movies don't have like a good looking female or two in the cast, but like uh, it's also not often that like you almost become smitten by like, whoa, like who is this? Because my first thought was like, wow, she is beautiful, and like I haven't really seen her before, and I think Venom, you mentioned it was like her first like big feature, so that could explain why. But yeah, I gotta say, like that was nice. Unfortunately, it couldn't
If we
elevate.
actually,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, if we actually have any female listeners, please forgive us, ladies. We're not scumbags. We're just taken aback when we see an actress this gorgeous. Think of it this way. When you see Honda Accord after Honda Accord after Honda Accord on the road, you don't even notice. But once a Lamborghini drives by, you turn your head and you notice. So that's the best analogy I could give. So like I said, please forgive us, ladies. We're not trying to be creeps by any stretch.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's natural though, because like it's the same time, or it's the same thing that happened the first time like I saw an Aubrey Hepburn movie of her like in her prime, like the years that actually people talk about her for. Like, you know, I grew up obviously way after that era, so like I just knew Aubrey Hepburn of like the years I was alive and started watching movies. And when I finally watched like a movie from that era of Aubrey Hepburn, I was like, oh, okay, I get why she was talked about. So it's that, you know, we're not nothing more than that. It's just recognizing like, okay, wow. But anyways, what I was gonna say is, yeah, unfortunately, it couldn't elevate the movie past just being like middle of the road. I would expect to see her in the future though, because you know, casting directors. But yeah, I would say it's like a mildly entertaining movie. Like there were elements I liked, like some of the lore or the lore of like the black magic stuff I thought was cool, because you know a lot of these movies will create their own specific like customs and ways things play out. And generally I liked the setup, the kind of like the location, um having to like look over the body, stay with it, and weird creepy things happen. It almost made me think partially of like Autopsy of Jane Doe, where you're in the presence of a body and then things start happening. Obviously the story is much different, circumstances are much different, but it partially made me think of that. And you know, I liked what they were doing with the movie. I just felt like it was just a little like service level hollow for me. It ended up being middle of the road when I think there were elements that built upon better. It could have been a really good movie, and it just ended up being like something we've seen a lot of, and it just didn't elevate past that. So yeah, I'll leave my general thoughts at that for the moment. Back to you, Venom.
This movie displays the biggest pet peeve that I have with the younger generation. And I know I sound like a crotchety old man right now, but please bear with me, folks. A long-time listeners know that I don't make fun of younger generations. I don't like generalizing. I don't like saying that millennials or Gen Z or Gen Alpha are less intelligent or anything like that, based on just a couple of people that are in that generation. I don't like to make those kind of generalizations. But what I will say is, one of the biggest pet peeves I have about the younger generation is the fact that they think they can do a 5-minute Google search on a topic and suddenly be an expert on it. And that mentality bugs the shit out of me. And we get that in this movie. Our main character, Rosario, literally does a 5-minute search, Google search, about the type of voodoo that her grandmother has been practicing. And suddenly she thinks she can do a ritual herself. And that kind of entitled, you know, mentality is it was one of the biggest reasons I disliked Rosario as a character in this movie. Like, she didn't give any credit, you know, that you need to learn this stuff over a lifetime, over a generation, to actually be an actual shaman or expert at what you're doing. But no, because she's had so much success in her life, because, you know, she came from a poor family. She's an only child from a poor family. And now she's one of the most sought after, you know, Wall Street stockbrokers out there in New York. She has this, you know, this kind of mentality that, oh, I can do anything, you know. And I think the younger generations kind of display that often. Like, they'll go to Google, they'll watch a video, and suddenly they think they know how to, swap out an engine from their car. It's like, no, you can get general information. Google is great for general information, general knowledge, things like that. But you're not going to go to Google, look up brain surgery, and expect to be able to know how to do fucking brain surgery, right? So why is it any different with voodoo? Like, why this girl growing up in a Latina family, she should have some kind of respect for the underworld, for witchcraft, voodoo, whatever you want to call it, Santeria, any of it. But she didn't have that respect for it, and that kind of bothered me about this character.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring that up too. I just wasn't sure if it would be in general thoughts or spoilers, but it definitely felt like like
Well,
Dollar General voodoo.
Well, that's kind of like what I was saying, was that it kind of feels like it's like a short, because they never really delve deep into it. Like, that's one of the things that you could have used and expanded on it a little bit more about, maybe not necessarily what the grandmother was studying, but more like, letting her look into it a little bit more.
And give us a little bit more background on it too. Like, I mean, we get a very general explanation on what Paulo Mayombe actually is, and I'll give a more detailed explanation than the movie actually gives us once we get into the walkthrough. But yeah, like the movie, I mean, I was actually saying that I was happy that the movie was under 90 minutes, but I think Mike has and Mike and Don both have valid points that maybe this movie could have been, 5 to 15 minutes longer, give us a little bit more lore, a little bit more mythology, a little bit more of Rosario actually doing the work to try to learn what the fuck she's doing. And maybe the, movie might have been fleshed out a little bit more, or a little bit better anyway. But I definitely agree.
It felt like her contribution to like the black magic rituals on that was like on the level of like watching the girls from The Craft like dabble in like being witch. Like it was like it just felt like it was too cheap, I guess. The fact that like, because it was kind of explained that like due to family, certainly, I'm not going to get into all the plot points, but she basically had no connection to that aspect of her like family or ancestry or anything, and it ended up amounting to, oh yeah, my grandma had this old dusty book and I'll just grab that and then that'll be that. And it's like, whoa, that's pretty like simple of a way to try to get out of this. Okay.
Like I did a Google search on the exact same thing that Rosario does in the movie, and I went down like a 1-hour rabbit hole of just all these different like techniques and different voodoo practices that are kind of attached to both this religion and Santeria being the more popular version and the less dark version of the practice that we get here. I believe it was Paulo Mayombe was the name of it, which is
without subtitles.
I'll give you
it's close without subtitles or anything like that. That's as close as I can, as much as I could sound it out.
Right. No, I hear you. No, Paulo, the word by itself means religion. So there's going to be multiple Paulo this, Paulo that type religions, but this one's Paulo Mayombe is the one that grandma is practicing here, which, like I said, I'll kind of go over it during our walkthrough. But yeah, this is one of those situations where I definitely think the movie could have been a little bit longer. I mean, I'm always happy when I see a sub 90-minute movie, especially in theaters. Knowing that I'm not going to be in that theater for more than a couple of hours makes me happy. But yeah, this is definitely one that could have been fleshed out a little bit more, like both Mike and Don said. So I'm not sure what else we can really talk about without getting into spoilers. So let's go ahead and get into it, folks. This will be your final spoiler warning. If you have not seen Rosario and are interested in seeing it, go ahead and pause the show and come back after you see it. If you've already seen it or don't have much interest, go ahead and stick around and find out our detailed thoughts on the movie. So our movie opens up with a party. At first, I thought it was a quinceañera because it kind of looked like because in New York, they're probably not doing as many outdoor celebrations as they are here in California. Literally, you drive by a park anywhere in Southern California on a weekend, there's probably a quinceañera going on somewhere. So as it turns out, it was not a quinceañera. It's actually a first communion party. So little Rosario just had her first communion. All of her family is gathered, and at one point, she decides to go see where grandma is because grandma doesn't seem to be like participating in the festivities. When she ends up finding her, she finds her doing something in her bedroom that she can't really comprehend. She notices that her grandmother's hand is bleeding. Grandma just kind of pulls her hand back right away and just tells her to get out of her bedroom. We find out later that grandma practices a different religion than the rest of the family, because at the party we actually have a prayer where the whole family does the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father prayer. But grandma does not participate. Everyone in the family participates, but grandma's just kind of standing there staring at Rosario, almost staring daggers into her. Like, what's funny is that because of the way that grandma kind of treated Rosario in these early scenes, Rosario's assumption about what grandma was doing is almost warranted, even though, as the viewer, we know she's totally wrong, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So like I said, grandma just ends up not participating in the prayer, and Rosario obviously feels very odd about it, like grandma's doing something that she shouldn't be, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, we get a time jump. It's about, I don't know, it's got to be like 15, 20 years later. And now Rosario is grown up and incredibly attractive. Sorry, I'm saying it again. As it turns out, she has grown up to be a very highly sought after stockbroker on Wall Street. We have a couple of scenes with her at work with some kind of misogynistic coworkers that are treating her like a little bit lesser than a coworker because she's a woman. They're kind of giving her shit because she's about to exercise a stock option on a stock that the rest of the company says is going to tank, but she, for some reason, has a feeling that it's not. When she eventually does have her assistant exercise the stock option, the stock instantly starts to rise. I mean, like within a minute of the stock option being exercised. So that kind of tells you right there kind of how Rosario's life is going. She's obviously, she's gone from this only child of a poor, illegal family, mind you, because this family did illegally cross the border to get her into America. Rosario was born in the States. Her mother was pregnant when she came over. So Rosario is still a citizen. I'm not sure if mom and dad ever became naturalized. They don't actually make a comment about that. They do mention that grandma is still illegal, which is why they can't do certain things later in the film, which I'll get into here in a little bit. So, after Rosario, and then we see Rosario in her apartment. Jeez, this has to be like a multi-million-dollar apartment right in downtown Manhattan with a view that is ridiculous. I mean, like I said, we get a good 15 or so minute montage just showing us how successful Rosario has become. She's a freaking vision of just perfect beauty. She's rich. She has this ridiculous apartment in New York. I mean, it's crazy. Anyway, one day she ends up getting a phone call on her cell phone, and when she looks at the phone, she sees that it's coming from her grandmother. She ends up ignoring the call multiple times throughout the day because, of course, she's a stockbroker, a Wall Street stockbroker, so she's busy. When she finally gets the opportunity to answer the phone, she answers it, and it turns out, and if you've seen the trailer, then you know where I'm going with this. Rosario gets a phone call from the superintendent of her grandmother's apartment building, letting her know that that grandma was found dead that day. Basically, the superintendent and one of the neighbors went into her apartment, found her dead on the floor. They weren't sure if she died from a fall or just, old age. So they picked up her body, they put it on the couch, they covered her with a bed sheet, and then went ahead and called Rosario. So once Rosario gets to the apartment, she pulls the sheet off her grandmother to find that grandma looks like she's been dead for weeks. Like her flesh is like a dark gray color. She's got carvings all over her skin, like different symbols, like religious symbols, iconography, voodoo symbols, things like that, like not literally on every inch of her body, but every time Rosario would pull on her leg or her arm, she'd see more like carvings in her grandmother's body. Eventually she finds a locked closet in the back of grandma's bedroom closet. There's like a door, but it's got a padlock on it. Eventually, she goes around looking for, a key. She does eventually find one. And when she goes into the room, you can tell that some crazy fucked up witchcraft has been going on in this room. What she finds before we even talk about what she finds, let's talk about the religion, because at this point she's already read the book and she's already done the Google search. Basically, the name of the religion is Palo Mayombe. And this religion is an Afro-Caribbean religious tradition, often considered the dark side of Santeria. Santeria, obviously being a Latino religion, it's the more popular version of Palo Mayombe. And like I said, it's not as concerned with, the dark side, underworld, the dead, things like that. Whereas Palo Mayombe concentrates more on the dead, focuses more on the dead. Santeria focuses more on the living. So Palo Mayombe focuses on working with the spirits of the dead for both positive and negative purposes. In other words, curses or blessings. Practitioners engage in rituals often involving a cauldron called an ngange, containing various objects like sticks, herbs, bones, and human remains. Palo Mayombe is believed to have originated in the Congo region of Africa. So despite this being a kind of a religion that was started in Africa because of the slave trade, that religion came over to North America, both the States and Mexico. So they kind of merged together to make this new version of the religion. So there you go. So this is what grandma practices. Like I said, it focuses on the dead. The practitioners are called paleros, rather than calling them like witches or witch doctors. The Spanish word is palero. They have various, rituals and ceremonies. I already mentioned that it came from the Congo. It has a very complicated relationship with Santeria. They have some common roots, and some practitioners can even engage in both, but for the most part, they are kept separate. And like I said, Palo Mayombe is definitely more of the negative version of Santeria. So there you go. There's your history lesson for the day, or at least your religious lesson. So after Rosario reads all this stuff, she ends up doing a Google search, like I said, does like a 5-minute Google search, reads on some, basic information about it, and then just makes the assumption that her grandmother cursed her. Now, friends, I already told you, this is an only child from an illegal Mexican family who is now the most sought after stockbroker on Wall Street. What the fuck about your life makes you think your grandmother cursed you? Like, this is where I'm like, Rosario's an idiot. Like, she is an absolute moron to look at this perfection of a life that she has and thinks, oh, grandma cursed me. I mean, I'm sorry, but I don't care how gorgeous you are. That's an idiotic decision. It makes no fucking sense to me. Maybe if her father was there, because she did end up calling her father is on his way to grandma's apartment, but because Rosario lives a lot closer to it, she's already there and she's waiting for dad to arrive. Maybe if dad was there with her when she arrived, he might have been able to say, no. How can you say she cursed you? Look at your life. Look at your damn life. Your life is a dream. How can you possibly assume that she cursed you? But unfortunately, she assumes that grandma cursed her. She starts looking through this very old, spell book that her grandmother has. And she finds a ritual in there on uncursing someone. Like I said, mind you, she's assuming that her grandmother cursed her. So go ahead.
Even the mom cursing her would have made more sense than the grandma, but that was like never even broached as like a possibility.
Exactly. And I kind of
just according to how like the story went, I mean, because like sure. Explain that the parents had a divorce and she decided to go with like the dad, so maybe the mom.
Yeah, that's what I was that's what I was just about to explain. Yeah. So basically I kind of skipped that part, folks. Yes. Rosario's parents are not together. Her mother actually passed away from a condition that she got while crossing the border, while pregnant with Rosario. After her mother died and, Rosario kind of didn't feel real comfortable with her grandmother, she kind of forsook that side of the family and just kind of sided with her father and everything else. So obviously, there is some guilt involved. Rosario is living with some form of guilt that's obviously getting worse and worse the more that she learns about both her mother and her grandmother. So, like I said, she decides to try a spell that she finds in the book that's supposed to uncurse someone. And what the spell says is that if you take that cauldron, the Nganga, and you put in the blood of the person who did the curse and then the blood of the cursed person themselves into the cauldron and then speak these, this magic incantation, that it would break the curse. Well, Rosario does the incantation, and once it's done, she doesn't feel any different. She's, trying to figure out, did it work? Am I no longer cursed? But then literally right then and there, a spirit shows up, just a very fucked up looking female spirit, tall, thin, white dress, dark hair. We've seen it before. Very demonic looking, the long fingernails, the glowing eyes, blah, blah, blah. This entity rears its ugly head multiple times throughout the movie. So obviously, after the spirit shows up the first time, Rosario realizes, shit, the ritual didn't work. Maybe she didn't have enough of grandma's blood, because grandma had been dead for many hours at this point. So when she tried to extract blood from her grandmother, it was like, it was very difficult. She couldn't just prick her finger. Like, anybody who knows anything about the human body knows blood's going to start congealing as soon as your heart stops pumping. As soon as the blood in your body stops moving, it's going to start to congeal. It's going to pool at the bottom of your body, based on how you're laying, either flat on your back or on your stomach, like that congealed blood is going to pool. So yeah, she is able to get blood, but she has to practically stab right through her grandmother's dead arm, like literally takes like a big ass butcher knife and stabs right through the arm. And then finally she gets like a couple of little drips of blood out of there. Anyway, that's all for naught because the ritual didn't work. She keeps trying to figure out, what could be happening. There is a particular demon or a particular spirit that they are basically asking for this, blessing, if you will. I forgot the name of the demon. It starts with a K. I don't think it's all that important, but ultimately, yeah, this is the spirit, the demon, the entity, whatever you want to go with, that they asked for this favor. Now, as the movie goes along, Rosario has more interactions with this spirit, more horror set pieces, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, Rosario comes to the realization that, oh shit, I was not cursed. I was actually blessed. Grandma was actually blessing me. And she gets this realization from David Dashmelian's character. David Dashmelian plays Joe. He is the neighbor from across the hall. From grandma's apartment. Joe is aware of who Rosario is because the grandma always talked so highly of her and how much she loved her. And then when Joe actually said that he heard grandma every single night praying for good luck, praying for Rosario that everything that she does is successful, blah, blah, blah. That's when Rosario makes the realization that, oh shit, grandma didn't curse me. She was blessing me. The reason I'm this lucky is because of her. But at this point, she's already pissed off the spirit. This demonic spirit that's kind of, like I said, rearing its ugly head multiple times. As it turns out, she ends up reading more about the actual incantation that grandma put on her, the blessing. As it turns out that when the person who is blessed finally reaches the success that they're looking for, which Rosario has at this point, like I said, she's a huge stockbroker, she's rich, blah, blah, blah. She's got the world at her feet. Yeah, the book says that once the blessed person reaches their goals, that the person who did the incantation, who did the blessing, basically has to give their spirit up to the demon that they, requested this blessing from. So obviously, Rosario, being so successful, ends up, grandma passes away. So this, as it turns out, this spirit that we're seeing throughout the movie is here to collect grandma's soul, basically. We did our end of the bargain, so now it's time for you to pay us, blah, blah, blah. But as it turns out, later in the film, we find out that this entity that's haunting Rosario is actually the spirit of her mother, her biological mother. Now, granted, it may not actually be the spirit of her mother. It could be a demon pretending to be her mother. But when you watch the movie, every time we see the demon, it does vaguely look like her mother. So I'm just going to assume that that actually is her mother's spirit, or a demon pretending to be her mother. And basically her mother relays the story to her Rosario of how they crossed the border. As it turns out, mom was pregnant with Rosario when they crossed the border. Mom ended up getting captured. Dad and grandma ended up getting away. They were able to get into the country, no problem. But mom ended up getting captured, getting taken into custody by ICE agents, and going through the whole 9-degree, everything that they have to go through. How mom ends up in this country anyway after getting caught is beyond me. They don't tell us in the movie. They don't show us. So either the ICE agents let her stay in the country because she was pregnant, and she was sick, by the way. They don't tell us exactly what happened, but she caught something while traveling to cross the border. We see her coughing pretty much the whole time we see her in the movie alive. She's coughing. And then that's when we find out through this flashback that, yeah, she got sick during the crossover. She got captured. It took a toll on her both physically and mentally. So basically, mom never recovered from whatever it is that she caught that night. Even though she ended up dying from it, 10, 12 years later, she basically just never got better from it. So she was sick basically Rosario's whole life. Now, because of that, the mom spirit basically starts to get mad at Rosario, saying, everything that I did, I practically, killed myself to get you to this country, to get you a better life. And then you ignore me after I die. You ignore my mother. You literally just ignore my entire side of the family, which, kind of makes me feel like this isn't Rosario's mother, that it's actually a spirit pretending to be, because how can you figure that Rosario's mother would be that upset with her over this, especially because Rosario's mother was alive for a good 10 to 12 years after they crossed the border. So obviously, Rosario starts to feel a great deal of guilt about it, starts apologizing to her grandmother's, dead body. I'm so sorry that I left you, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, dad does show up. He ends up showing up the next morning after a fairly intense horror set piece that ends the festivities from the evening before. Dad shows up, and, Rosario basically starts, explaining to dad what she thinks grandma was doing. She shows dad the spell book, everything else. And then just at this point, the ambulance has already come. They've collected up grandma's body. The snowstorm is over. The snowstorm that was preventing the ambulance from picking up her body the night before, the day that she died. So grandma's now gone. Literally, Rosario and her father are in her grandmother's apartment, just ready to leave for the last time. And then dad gives Rosario the car keys and says, why don't you go, start the car, and I'll be down there in a second. After a while, after a couple of minutes, Rosario starts to realize that dad hasn't come out yet, and she's wondering what the hell's going on. She ends up walking back to her grandmother's bedroom, doesn't find her father, but then she hears chanting in the back room. You remember the room, the hidden room behind the closet that had the cauldron in it. She ends up opening the door to the hidden room, and there's dad cutting his hand open and putting blood in the cauldron. Now, the reason he's doing this was The original blessing that the grandmother made, or the plot twist is that grandma didn't actually do this blessing. It was actually the dad. We end up seeing a flashback scene back to the first communion party at the beginning of the movie. What we find out what grandma was doing that day is she caught her stepson, Rosario's father, basically doing the incantation, the blessing for Rosario. But the grandmother understood that he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. So she basically takes over. And what happens is someone has to put blood in the cauldron every single day, literally every single day. The person who owns the cauldron has to cut themselves and sacrifice some blood every day to keep the blessing going. Now, if you remember earlier in the movie when Rosario was trying to do the anti-curse, where she was trying to stop the curse, and it said that the person who did the curse and then the person who is cursed have to put their blood in the cauldron. Well, now dad is putting his blood in the cauldron because he thinks he has to take over for grandma. Like I said, dad doesn't know this religion nearly as much as grandma does. So he literally thinks that he needs to just take over for grandma, and he's going to now start sacrificing blood into the cauldron. The problem is he is the actual person who started the blessing the first time. I'm a little fuzzy on the details on this part, so maybe some explanation might be in order. But what I gathered from it is that if you remember earlier when she was trying to do the uncurse thing, the person who did the curse had to put their blood in there. But grandma didn't actually curse her, which is why that first incantation didn't work. But now here's dad, the man who actually did do the curse or the blessing, putting his blood in the cauldron. As soon as Rosario sees it, she's like, oh, please tell me you did not put your blood in that cauldron, because she remembers the anti-curse thing. Well, as it turns out, dad fucked himself, because by him putting his blood in that cauldron, he was basically sacrificing himself to the spirit that that they originally contacted to get the blessing. And what ends up happening, it's pretty instant, folks. There's no waiting at all. Pretty much dad just becomes possessed. We see his eyes turn blood red, and he's suddenly ultra strong. He's got this cheesy demonic smile on his face, and he's basically, chasing Rosario through the apartment. Joe, David Dashmelian's character, hears the commotion. He breaks into the apartment, grabs an air fryer, and starts beating the shit out of dad with it. Unfortunately, dad is now possessed by a demon, so he ends up disarming Joe, picking him up by his neck and unceremoniously breaking his neck. One of only like 2 kills in the movie, I think, if I remember correctly. The second one's about to come up here in a sec. So after killing Joe, again, Rosario and her father are, at odds. He's chasing her around the apartment. Eventually, she gets the better of him. I forgot to mention that the nganga, the cauldron that they've been using, has like knife blades and other sharp objects sticking out of it. There's also human remains. There's like a human skull. There's some flesh. Some other stuff in there, but when you look at it, it looks almost like a weapon because it's got like blades sticking out of the top of it. Eventually, Rosario is able to get the upper hand on her father. She's able to push her father back onto the floor. He ends up falling right on the cauldron and impaling himself on all of the sharp objects that are sticking out of the cauldron. He basically becomes, unpossessed for like the final moments of his life. He apologizes to his daughter. He's like, I'm sorry, I couldn't protect you. And then he ends up just dying. And I think that's pretty much the end of our film. I don't think there was, oh, right. There's one extra scene after that where she ends up giving, the epilogue, where earlier in the film, she denied a poor Latino man the ability to buy some stocks because she said that he didn't have enough money. The firm that she works for, you have to have a certain minimum amount of money to deposit into a stock portfolio and then start trading stocks. But after this whole thing, with her grandmother, she decides that she wants to be a little bit more loyal to her people and to, the people that come from her country and the people that practice her religion and everything else. So we end up seeing her actually offering a brokerage account to the person that she denied earlier, basically now under the guise of, I'm going to help out my Mexican people more than I ever have before, because of how I treated my mother's side of the family. Blah, blah, blah. Movie ends. I walk out of the theater dissatisfied. And that's Rosario 2025. Not sure what else we can really add to it. Like I said, it's obviously I didn't go over every single horror set piece. There's a couple of set pieces here and there, jump scares and things like that. But ultimately, I went over the main plot points, the stuff that's important. And, like Don said, there's just not really much here. There's not really any compelling storyline. There's like the seeds of a compelling storyline, but it never really flourishes to anything actually compelling. It just kind of devolves into been there, done that. Like I said, I've seen movies this year, witchcraft movies that kind of have this same storyline of, oh, the plot twist is it was a different member of the family who was actually doing the witchcraft and not the person who was originally accused. Like, yeah, it's a fairly basic storyline we've seen before. Like I said, at least the movie looks nice, and at least Rosario is easy to look at. So there is some quality to be had with the movie, but overall, it's been there, done that. I'd say if you've been watching horror even 10, 15 years, there's probably not going to be a whole lot original about this movie. But if you're a new horror fan, a younger horror fan, still in high school or your early 20s, I think you're going to enjoy it. Like if I saw this movie at 25, I probably would have absolutely loved it. But once you've been watching horror for a long time and you've seen witchcraft movie after witchcraft movie after witchcraft movie, we kind of had the same conversation a few weeks ago about Indonesian movies, how they're starting to become fairly formulaic. Well, American witchcraft movies have been formulaic for a lot longer, and they still are. So, yeah, I doubt this will be the last, formulaic movie like this that we see even this year. But like I said, at least the movie was nice to look at. So I'll give it that. But that's it for me.
Yeah, I would just say yes to all that stuff that you just said. It's a movie that, I'm sure it'll be on streaming in the not too near future where people will be able to see it. And I don't see many people having a different conclusion than us. Like there might be people that a little more or a little less than we did, but it's a very standard formulaic movie that just really doesn't do enough to separate itself or make it all that memorable. You didn't feel like it was a waste of time watching it, but it's just you're gonna forget about it in like a few weeks.
I mean, I'm gonna forget about the movie. I'm not gonna forget about the character for a very long time. Sorry.
I mean,
I'm trying, ladies. So. I swear. But yeah, wow, Mexican and Lebanese, what a combination! Like, definitely, you can see the Lebanese like in the face, the eyes, the hair, and then the Latina everywhere else. So yeah, goddamn. I'll shut up now. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it is a interesting mix though, because when I was watching the movie, like obviously the family is like a Latino or Hispanic, of that origin. But but every time you see her, it feels like she could have like something else going on there too, because she has a very distinct look. I think that's why, like the three of us, kind of like were kind of drawn to her, and just because it's not like a standard like look that you see. It looked like there's a little more to it. True.
I mean, yeah, definitely you don't see, kind of ethnic actresses take the lead in genre films nearly as often as you should. Obviously, with this movie basically being, a Mexican myth, it makes sense that she was cast in here. But yeah, I definitely would like, and back to Don's point about the vigil, like I didn't even think about the vigil while I was watching this. But Don is 100% correct. I mean, the whole concept of staying in someone's house overnight to watch their dead body, even though in the Vigil it's an actual religious rite and something that has to be done, a religious practice, whereas here it's just there was a snowstorm and the ambulance couldn't get the body out of there. But yeah, the similarities are very striking when you actually think about it. So yeah, definitely a good call there. But just like Don said, the Vigil is about 10 times a better movie though, so I'll lean towards the Vigil over this one any day of the week.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up our discussion on Rosario and this episode of Fresh Cuts. But let's see or hear from everyone to see if there's anything else they have out for people to listen to. So, Venom, I'll start with you.
Let's see. The latest thing we have is No More Room in Hell presents Creature Comforts. Episode 37 is now available, where we look at a Japanese anime for the first time. We look at Hayao Miyazaki's Princess Mononoke, coming to us from Studio Ghibli from 1997. Very fun episode, at least for two of us. As it turns out, one of the hosts on the show is not as into anime as the other two are, but I won't give that away. So you'll have to tune into the episode to find out. But yeah, that one is definitely available now. The next episode of the Crystal Lake Gift Shop is planned and ready to go. That should be available before the end of this month. And the next episode of Creature Comforts, episode 38, has already been decided on. That one's actually probably going to be very shortly after the Crystal Lake Gift Shop. Both episodes will be out before the end of this month, and I'll obviously have a lot more to say about them once they are available. But yeah, that's it for now for me.
All right. Anything from you, Don?
Yeah, not much. As Venom alluded, latest Creature Comforts is available. Yeah, next episode is already scheduled, so those are going to be kind of not necessarily back to back, but they're going to be kind of close to each other. So definitely look out for those. And the only other thing is the 80s creature feature roundtable that I brought up last week. This time we do have a date set for everything. So hopefully we'll have a little bit more. I'll mention that closer to the release date. But yeah, other than that, not much else.
Okay. And for me, nothing brand new, but since it's only been out for a week, I'll just remind the listeners I was on the Sin Bin show, which is 22 Shots' kind of spin-off show where they do a monthly YouTube show where they talk about some of the monthly new releases from Sin Bin or Vinegar Syndrome's releases, and it can include all their partner because they have like a long list of like partner distributors under their umbrella. So they all pick a release, and when there's a guest, the guest picks a release, and then they all kind of do reviews. So that's up on YouTube under the same channel as 22 Shots. And as far as Fresh Cuts goes, I know we have releases coming out this week. I just can't remember what they are because I think May has a good amount. Like maybe at least I think we have like what 3-4 weeks left in the month, and I think there's like at least one release almost every week this month. I just can't remember the order. I think Final Destination is this month.
That's the 16th, May 16th for Final Destination. What else we got here? Oh, next week is Clown in a Cornfield.
Yeah.
Awesome. Which is playing in theaters. Go figure. So yeah, we actually got a theatrical release this week.
Yeah, it actually started playing at the drive-in here already.
Nice.
Which is weird. Yeah.
Yeah, it says here that there's premiere screenings May 7th, which is this Wednesday. And then it opens 2 days later. But yeah, you're right. We're at the theater almost every day or every week this month. We've got Clown in a Cornfield this coming week. The week after, we've got Final Destination. Then let's see. After that, it's Bring Her Back, the new A24 horror film. So I'm sure Don's excited about that one. And Oh, what's this? Oh, that's Clown. That's Clown in the Cornfields again. So yeah, we're at the theater at least 3 of the remaining 4 weeks in the month.
Sounds good. All right.
Yeah.
Well, with that said, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll be back with another new release to talk about next week. So let's say bye to our listeners.
Later.
Can I be in love with a woman I've never met? I'm going to say yes. Take care, folks.
Peace.